Hey up, my name is Nana Bean, whichever you've seen, and welcome to my series where I make kingdoms based off of Minecraft YouTubers. Today, this is Tommyinnit, one of my personal favorites, and I'm really happy with how this turned out so far. Well, let's get to it. Breaking this into districts rather than anything else first, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a very specific area of how I wanted to do this. So first, I started with District 1, which was going to be mainly just proper houses, people, they're able to live in this sort of area, and they're just, the best place where they can do this sort of stuff. Now, I did have a lot of trouble, especially with the building blocks, because I had set myself a palette. I had set myself palettes for all of these districts. There are 6 in total, so this is the palette for District 1. Now, as you see, it has quite a few blocks. It has red nether bricks, it has, some normal nether bricks, and basalt, and some crimson stem as well. I had no clue how to use that. Like, there's just a lot of blocks that I didn't particularly know how to use, and there's also a little bit of blacksmith in there. So, I let myself, use variants of these blocks, so I wasn't just going to be using these blocks. But this first house was extremely hard for me to do, mainly because I had no clue how I was going to use it, because this was going to be the base model for the rest of the houses. So in order for this to be the base model for the rest of the houses, it, has to be good enough to be a base model. So I ended up going back through it and changing it a lot, especially with how I wanted, things to lay out and how I wanted places to be and all that sort of jazz. So this first house probably took me like half an hour or so. So I'm actually really happy with how it came out, and I'm especially happy with that because it did, end up having all of the other houses. And I did have a little bit of trouble with the framing, especially with the basalt, because I wasn't too sure if I wanted to keep it, but I did end up keeping it, mainly just because I think it brings it all together nicely and just has it all nice and stuff. Now, especially with this bottom area and the top area, I wasn't too sure what I was doing because I just didn't know. Like, I wanted to have, a bedroom and like something like that. So just somewhere like that. But with the bottom area, I didn't know how I wanted to do it because yes, these are, people living in they're the richer people, right? We just gone. They're the richer. They're not the richest, but they're comfortably living. So they have a lot of, space, and they have all this sort of stuff, but in reality, they wouldn't have a lot of, personal items. They would only mainly have the base functions, and then that would essentially be it. So with all of this, I tried to make sure, it looks cluttered. Not cluttered, but, just full enough that it wasn't, just nothing there. And then I also decided to have each house have a different music disc. Because, I don't know, when I think of Tommyinnit, it's, just music discs, okay? It's what comes to my mind, don't judge me. But I felt like that back wall was a little bit empty, so I did add a little bit of a painting. Now, I had a night vision potion on the entire time, so I didn't realize that I wasn't adding lighting, because in my brain it was, like light enough because I had a night vision potion on, because it's really hard to build with solid black concrete, and I had just been doing that, like finding all this stuff, so it is a little bit dark, so I'm very sorry about that. But so the next house I also had a little bit of issue with. I wanted to get the red nether brick out of the way because it is such a bright block and so just intense. It's such an intense block, that's what it is, and it's really hard to use. And then I also realized through this mistake that I had accidentally merged those walls, so I didn't want to go back and change all of them so there'd be 2 gap instead of like a 2 block gap, so they each have their respective walls. So I decided to just bring it together. I decided to bring it together a little bit and like have a little bit of a gradients to make it look a little bit nicer. But yeah, so far, I was so happy with how the first one came out, so I was like, you know what, screw it. We're going to use crimson planks for everything. We're going to use all that sort of stuff. But again, so I did allow myself to use variants of these blocks, because if I didn't, then I would have gone crazy, because this is like 6 blocks. I was not going to be using 6 blocks for like 7 or so different houses with decorations and everything. I'm sorry, but that is not happening. But it was definitely a challenge to, incorporate all the blocks and at least have some, try and have some sort of differences between them, because I didn't want to just, be a recoloring of each one. So I did try and change up the inside of all of them, and especially the top area as well. I didn't have as much, freedom with there, but I did have enough. Yeah, so that was house number 2, and I had make sure I had like a little door. Doors were typically a major issue for me, just because I didn't want to have them all be the same door. But since I was only allowed those certain blocks, I allowed myself to have some spruce and dark oak doors. because those are in other palettes for the rest of the, you know, city, and I wanted to have it, you know, all that sort of jazz. Now, on the palette, black concrete is one of them, I believe. I don't know, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. I was reciting it from memory, but I didn't want it to, you know, merge with the wall too much, so I added a little bit of concrete powder in there as well to add a little bit of texture, have all that sort of stuff. And then it's the same with the basalt. I had like different variants of basalt, like the polished basalt and the just, you know, normal basalt, and then also like the other type of basalt. There's a third one, smooth basalt, that one. So I added all those together to make it, you know, look a bit more fancy. So just again, it's all about texture. Texture can add a lot to a build, whether you know it or not. So having different variants of the same block is extremely helpful, and especially when you know like how those blocks can go together and what looks good. As soon as you know that, you're done. Like you've perfected your task, and you can do it all nice and well. Yeah, so I was really thinking about how I wanted each of these houses to look, and especially because they were all supposed to be, you know, all of my cities and all of my kingdoms are villager accessible, because villagers are going to be in this house and then these cities to make them look full. So, well, you know, to add more to the city, so it's like, it's not just, you know, a massive empty city, there's like actually people here and all that. So with that, I wanted to make sure it's like, okay, what would a villager have in their house? Oh, that's what a villager will have in their house, you know? All of that. Now, for this one, I think I struggled just a little bit, especially with the black stone, because it was also the first one where I wasn't too sure what to do with the roof, because with all of the other roofs, I had used the polished black stone. But since this house was black stone, I just wasn't too sure. I'm just like, oh, well, I can't use blackstone because then it's matchy with the house and stuff. So I did actually end up using basalt, and that's what made me change my mind about the red nether brick one. I actually added basalt into that as well, like as a roof, because then the colors matched a little more better than the basalt and the blackstone, purely because that sort of stuff. It just the polished blackstone has a more of a bluish tint, whereas, you know, in contrast to the red brick, it didn't look as good as I want it to be. So I ended up changing it to the polished basalt, back to the polished basalt, mainly just because I wanted to have those complementary colors rather than the contrasting colors. You know, again, with all of these houses, I'd say probably the black and just the black concrete one is probably my favorite, because I used warped like logs and all that sort of stuff instead. And I didn't use it on any other ones, and I don't know why, because it just looks the nicest to me. This is when I realized that, you know, lighting was a thing, and so I did lighting. But yeah, so I just went back through all the houses and made sure there was lighting, and especially with the rest, like the front, because I realized that was also a little bit dark. So this is the first time I turned off my night vision, because I was streaming this and I was like, oh, do you guys want to check out the night vision, because the little potion particles were annoying me, and then I did, and it was incredibly dark, and I'm like, oh, okay then, I forgot that happens. But you know, so with our good old, here's this house. This house is probably one of my favorites. Now, my absolute favorite is obviously the black one. It's the black concrete one. It's my favorite. But this one is another one of my favorites because it was one of those blocks. With my shaders, it looks gorgeous. Without the shaders, it probably looks a little bit funky. But I really like it because like it adds that like a little bit of glow magic, you know, because I play with shaders constantly. You know, I really like how this one turned out, especially the inside as well. I just think it all like looks so nice, and I'm so happy with what like the flooring choice was as well. I just think it all looks so cool, and I just really like how it turned out. I made sure that all of these sort of things had like logs, and again, it was that texture because I didn't want it to just, you know, be like up and down, because that sort of texture does have like a set pattern. I wanted to also, you know, have like that little bit of log swaggy, you know. But yeah, so I chose basalt apparently for the flooring. Then also for the bottom, I chose the black stone, and I think this is where the good contrast comes in. Whereas with the red nether brick, it just doesn't work as well. But here it works quite well because, you know, it's more of a bluish tone, but it works with that because it has a purple tone in it. especially with the, you know, like the log side. I made sure to add some bedding, at least 2 beds, and some sort of like, you know, like wall or like little bench, I guess, because, you know, and a flower. I also added a flower in each of these because I wanted to. Now, with the story for this, city, it's quite a dark one. Don't ask me why I came up with it. I just did. But the entirety of it was that there was a piece of land that is in the center that you can kind of see, but not really. But then you'll be able to see it soon. You'll be able to see it soon. Is essentially what, like, this land was worshipped. Like, these guys, they're like, oh, it's the land, it's the holy land, you know, like, they're like, holy crap, it's the most basic thing ever. Because they've never been in the outside world. This is their outside world. It's a perpetually nighttime forever, and they only have, like, that sort of stuff. So it's why I made the ground, you know, it's not grass, it's moss, it's moss blocks, it's terracotta, and some mossy cobblestone, and that's all like the ground is, because I didn't want to have any sort of, like, you know, grass or anything, except for in very certain areas, and this was not one of those certain areas. So this was mainly because I wanted to have just like that sort of, you know, like, ooh, scary. It's a ooh. So essentially someone had decided, they're like, oh, I wonder what would happen if, you know, we were to just chuck a bunch of people down somewhere and then just don't tell them about the outside world. And then this is it. This is the result of that. The result of that is, you know, they just decide, like, oh yeah, this is what happened. This is, you know, I'm actually pretty happy with this one. The flooring, basalt with the walls basalt, a little bit iffy. I might go against my past self on that, but you know what, it's fine. Now I remember doing this final house and being so bloody happy with it. Nether wart block. This was horrific to build with. Alright, now it's a lot better to build with than, like, you know, black, solid black concrete. That's pretty hard to build with. 0 out of 10, would not recommend it. But this was just so hard to build with because I had to, like, figure out, I was like, okay, am I going on basalt? Am I going on blackstone? It was just, my entire brain was just dying with it because I just hated how it looked, and I had to stop tweaking it so much because I knew if I just kept tweaking it, then I would never be happy with it. So that's the same thing with a couple of these houses though. Again, it's because of the palette that I was limited to, and I couldn't figure out, you know, how to make it look good, how to fix this, how to fix that. And so I really just tried for it, you know, I really just tried. You know, but this one I added like a little side window. Now you see that ladder there? That leads to the outside world. So this entire underground city, it's a secret little city, you know? So that's, I wanted to have, like, you know, houses all the way up to that ladder, because then that way the ladder was, like, a little bit hidden. And so that's what I did. I wanted to have that bit hidden, and it was like a little alleyway, and then it leads up to the outside world. So no one really knows about it. I mean, like, you would be living next to it, so you probably should know about it. Yeah, so that door also gave me a bit of issue. You know, so then what essentially I just did was that I just copied and then pasted it. That's all I did. I just copied and pasted it, and then I did that back to back. I did have to get rid of, because I had, like, embedded these buildings into the wall, I had to get rid of, you know, the concrete between and stuff. So I had to do that. That took a while, I'm not gonna lie, that took a while. And then it was also centering it all was a pain and a half to center all of it, because it was just so, like, it was so hard, because these aren't, like, accurate, you know, like, little sections. They're just little sections. They're not, like, you know, proper good sections and stuff. They're just kind of there. You know, so I also used, because, you know, again, there are palettes for each of these sections. Now I have 6 sections in total that I've labeled districts. And so the palettes for District 6 is essentially just like black and white. It's quartz, there's some black stone and all that sort of jazz. So I wanted to make the roads be opposite. So, like, you know, District 5 is more purple tones, and then District 4 is, you know, more red and brown tones, and then District 3 is some red and blue tones, and then, because I wanted all this to be, you know, red, obviously. But what that also meant is that each of them were going to be, you know, I wanted to kind of look like a little gradient, so it'd be like extreme red and dark red to pure white, all that sort of shit, and I want to be able to kind of see that, but you won't really be able to, but when you walk through districts you can kind of see it, but not a lot. But I'm actually really happy with how this turned out in the end. It did give me a lot of hassle, this specific part. I did go back and forth on it so many times, but it is also when I learned that the -air commands existed. I didn't know that. I didn't know you could paste it without air. So that was like a massive shocker to me, and like just was a godsend. But you know, so in end, I just think it's really cool, and I'm super excited for us to the city because I've actually worked on quite a lot so far, and yeah, so I'm so happy with this. Look at it, it's so cool. So that was in it part 1. I'm so happy with how this turned out. Make sure to follow me at twitch.tv/nonbinary because I stream this live. All of the city has been streamed live. Bye!